Have you ever received a message that made your heart race, even before you knew its meaning? Such was the question that echoed in Serafina's mind on that cool autumn afternoon as she stared at her phone. A single notification had arrived. A simple, yet mystifying message inviting her to dinner at an elegant restaurant called Delino's. Although she was exhausted from a long night on the hospital floor, something in the tone of the message tugged at her curiosity. Perhaps it was the promise of change, or maybe the unforeseen tenderness in a family she had always known only as duty. Serafina, no longer the timid girl of her youth but a determined young woman with a quiet strength, drove through the fading light. The sky blazed with hues of amber and violet as she navigated quiet streets. Every shadow and glint from the evening sun carried both hope and a hint of melancholy. It was as if the world was whispering that nothing would ever be quite the same again. Arriving at Delino's, she felt a swirl of anticipation mixed with trepidation. The restaurant, bathed in the soft glow of overhead chandeliers and warm candlelight, set a scene almost too perfect to be genuine. Inside, laughter and the clinking of glasses blended into a harmonious background score, as if orchestrated to accompany the unfolding drama of the evening. Turning the corner into a private dining room, Serafina froze. There, arranged with meticulous care, was an oversized, sparkling banner that boldly read, "Congratulations to our true daughter." The banner's glittering letters seemed to pulse with an energy that both welcomed and alienated her. At a long polished table sat her adoptive family, Cecilia with her graceful poise, Theodore with a reserved nod of approval, and her younger sister Viviana, who now appeared even more radiant than ever. Yet, in this moment, even the familiar warmth of family felt strangely distant. Serafina's pulse quickened. As she hesitated at the threshold, a subtle chill ran down her spine. She was the only one not greeted with a reserved smile or a reserved seat. The silence that followed was weighted with unsaid words, and every tick of the clock resonated like the beat of a drum signaling an inevitable revelation. The restaurant's ambience, with its rich scents of cedar and aged wine, magnified every emotion. With her uniform still partially on and the remnants of a hurried day clinging to her, Serafina felt as if she were stepping into a stage where everyone already knew their part, except her. Questions churned inside her. Was this invitation truly a celebration of family, or was it a prelude to a truth she was desperate to avoid? In that charged moment, every detail, the soft murmur of the other diners, the subtle flash of light off crystal glasses, even the whisper of the wind outside, seemed to signal that something in her world was about to irrevocably change. With a deep, steadying breath, Serafina moved forward, unaware that this dinner would mark the beginning of a journey to unearth secrets buried deep in her past and redefine what family truly meant. Stepping tentatively into the private dining room, Serafina's heart pounded as she took in the scene. The chatter softened and the atmosphere, once filled with innocent cheer, now carried an undercurrent of tension. At the far end of the table, a solitary envelope lay discreetly beside an untouched wine glass, its seal unbroken and its presence as enigmatic as the invitation itself. It wasn't long before her adoptive mother, now renamed Cordelia for this retelling, raised her glass in a toast that felt rehearsed rather than heartfelt. "Welcome, dear Serafina," Cordelia said with a smile that did little to hide the hollow warmth behind her eyes. Theodore, formerly known as Gerald, nodded absently, while her younger sister, now known as Verena, beamed radiantly, her eyes brimming with a sense of pride that seemed far too deliberate for a family gathering. Serafina, caught in a maelstrom of confusion and dread, could not shake the unmistakable realization that something was fundamentally different this night. The overwhelming presence of the banner proclaiming "Congratulations to our true daughter" filled the room with an irony that was impossible to ignore. As the candles flickered on the long, polished table, every whispered smile and sideways glance made it clear that she was on the outside of a celebration meant exclusively for Verena. Before she could gather the courage to speak, Verena's voice cut through the silence like a well-practiced script. "I know this may seem sudden, but I just have to tell you everything," she said, her tone both mocking and triumphant. With a confident air that belied her young age, Verena began recounting how she had taken a DNA test, one that confirmed her as the true biological daughter of the family. A fleeting shudder passed over Theodore's face, and even Cordelia's smile faltered, as if they were collectively wrestling with an uncomfortable truth. In that charged moment, Serafina's senses were overwhelmed by a mix of humiliation and sorrow. Every passing second deepened the chasm of alienation she felt at her own family's table. It was then that the unexpected happened. A softly spoken voice emerged from the periphery of the gathering. A waiter, his eyes kind yet troubled, approached Serafina with quiet deliberateness, placing a slender, sealed envelope in front of her. Its paper was heavy with secrets, and the handwriting on it struck a chord of painful familiarity. With trembling fingers, Serafina retrieved the envelope, its pristine surface undisturbed by the passage of time. Inside, a letter penned in elegant, deliberate cursive began to unravel the carefully maintained facade of her family's narrative. The letter, written by her late grandfather, now called Edmund, spoke of a past long buried. It revealed that her biological mother had been a woman named Liliana, a vibrant and fiercely independent music teacher, whose presence had lit up every room she entered. Liliana, tragically lost in an accident when Serafina was but a toddler, with her age now quietly advanced by 2 years in this reimagining, had once been the soul of the family, a detail deliberately erased from the memories of those left behind. As Edmund's words flowed across the delicate paper, Serafina's mind raced. The letters painted a picture of a loving, creative spirit whose songs once filled the air with hope and warmth, a stark contrast to the cold indifference she had come to accept as her destiny. The letter detailed a history of regret and complicity, how Cordelia and Theodore had taken her in not solely out of love, but out of a convoluted sense of duty and guilt, desperate to cover the void left by Liliana's absence. The revelation stung like a fever, each word unraveling years of quiet endurance and suppressed questioning. Around her, the mood at the table shifted imperceptibly. A heavy silence draped itself over the room as Serafina absorbed the painful truth that she had been living in a shadow, one orchestrated by those who feared the raw vulnerability of unvarnished truth. The elegant veneer of the evening, the soft jazz playing in the background, the muted clinks of cutlery against fine china, began to take on a surreal, almost dreamlike quality, as if the night itself were mourning the loss of an unacknowledged past. In the midst of this emotional chaos, Serafina felt a spark of defiance rise within her. The letter was more than just a reminder of what was taken from her. It was a call to reclaim her identity, her real heritage, and the story that had been suppressed. The envelope symbolized both an end and a beginning, a severing of the ties that had bound her to a constructed life, and a gateway to a future built on authenticity. She looked up, meeting the eyes of those at the table, and in that silent exchange, a decision was forged. No longer would she allow herself to be the invisible daughter, the shadow at the edge of an ostentatious celebration. Tonight, over glasses of wine and murmured confessions, Serafina tasted the bittersweet elixir of liberation. With renewed resolve, she resolved that this dinner, this painful revelation, was not the finale of her life but rather the first step in rewriting her story. Emerging from the weighty silence of the revelation, Serafina felt that the night had shifted its gravity. The gentle hum of the restaurant now seemed distant as she could only think of the letter and the secrets it unveiled. With each careful step away from the dining room, her mind churned through memories long suppressed. A collage of moments both bitter and bittersweet that had defined her adoptive life. Outside, the cool night air greeted her like a long-forgotten companion. The rustling of leaves underfoot and the soft glow of street lamps lent a surreal quality to the scene, as if the world itself was pausing to watch her transformation. Serafina paused beneath an ancient oak, its gnarled branches reaching skyward like outstretched fingers urging her onward. It was here, amid the natural cadence of the night, that the first seeds of defiance and liberation began to sprout in her heart. Determined to reconcile with her true past, Serafina drove to the modest home of her grandfather, Edmund, now older and wiser, with silver threads woven through his once dark hair and eyes that held the weight of decades. The small house was tucked away in a quiet cul-de-sac, its weathered exterior belying the warmth within. As she pulled into the driveway, every inch of the familiar path resonated with memories of childhood visits, of whispered secrets during family gatherings, and of silent support during turbulent moments. Edmund greeted her at the door with a tender smile and a look that spoke of unspoken understanding. "Serafina, my dear," he murmured as he enveloped her in a gentle embrace, a gesture filled with both love and sorrow. The old man's voice, soft yet laden with emotion, immediately brought to mind fragments of a family history that she had only ever sensed, not fully known. There, in the comforting glow of a table lamp in a cozy living room, Edmund invited her to sit and reminisce. Over cups of herbal tea that filled the air with a calming aroma of chamomile and mint, Edmund began sharing stories that swept her into a world of vivid recollections. He spoke of Liliana, not just as the biological mother she had only just come to know through ink on paper, but as a luminous spirit whose presence had once transformed every space she graced. Edmund recalled how Liliana's laughter would ring like a melody during summer nights, and how her gentle hands could craft beauty out of the simplest of things. As the grandfather recounted her love for music and the vibrant life she once led, Serafina found herself weeping with both joy and grief. Her eyes shimmered with tears, each drop a silent hymn to a mother she never truly remembered. In the soft lamplight, Edmund produced a small wooden box from beneath a worn cushion, a treasure trove of forgotten memories. Inside were faded photographs, a collection of letters, and a slender, weathered journal that had once belonged to Liliana. With deliberate care, Edmund handed them to Serafina, urging her to take in every detail. "These belong to you, my child. They are fragments of a truth that will guide your journey," he whispered, his voice trembling as he recounted the struggles of hiding the truth from a family bound by secrets. Serafina spent hours poring over the relics. A sepia-toned photograph captured Liliana in a moment of pure, unscripted bliss as she cradled a tiny infant, her face radiant with maternal love. A letter detailed the sacrifices and dreams that Liliana had harbored. Her dreams of nurturing a child, of creating a future filled with music and laughter, were now resurrected in Serafina's heart. Every word felt like a lifeline, anchoring her to a past that was as real as the present moment. As Edmund's stories unfolded, the room itself became a sanctuary, a living tableau of a bygone era where love and truth prevailed over fear. He recalled bittersweet anecdotes, the summer afternoons when Liliana would play her old violin on the porch, filling the air with melodies that echoed the heartbeat of the family, and the quiet nights when her lullabies soothed restless souls. Each recollection wove an intricate tapestry of hope, resilience, and the indomitable strength of a mother's love. Throughout this heartfelt exchange, Serafina discovered a renewed sense of self. The sharp sting of betrayal and neglect was slowly replaced by a clarion call to reclaim her identity, a self that was intricately intertwined with the music, love, and passion of Liliana. In that sacred space amid shared laughter and whispered sorrows, Serafina realized that though her past had been shrouded in secrecy, the fragments of truth she was gathering now would help her redefine her future. Determined and emboldened by the legacy of her real mother, Serafina resolved to embrace this newfound identity. Her grandfather's parting words resonated deeply in her soul. "Remember, child, that truth has the power to set you free. Carry her with pride and let nothing dim the light within you." And so, with a heart now brimming with courage and memories, she vowed to honor Liliana's legacy by living her life authentically and fearlessly. In the days that followed the fateful dinner, the air around Serafina seemed to vibrate with the promise of change. With the revelations echoing in her mind like an endless refrain, she began to realize that the life she had once accepted as immutable was now ripe for reinvention. Every morning as dawn broke through the misty horizon, she awoke with a steely resolve to forge a future that was entirely her own. It wasn't long before the weight of the past, of hidden truths and veiled deceptions, became too heavy to bear within the confines of her adoptive home. The carefully constructed facade that had once provided a sense of security now revealed itself to be a gilded cage. Serafina's heart ached with the knowledge that the love she had known was tainted by half-truths and regrets. She could no longer reconcile the image of the tender child she once was with the reality of feeling undeserving of the love that only seemed to shine on her radiant younger sister, Verena. One afternoon, after a long shift at the hospital where she'd spent countless nights tenderly mending broken lives, Serafina found herself wandering through the nearby park. The park was a mosaic of color with summer flowers now brightened by the early signs of fall. As she strolled along the winding paths lined with golden leaves, the gentle rustle beneath her feet became a steady beat, reminiscent of a drum calling her to action. It was here, enveloped in the serene symphony of nature's transformation, that she resolved to confront the past and reclaim the narrative of her life. With an urgent need to voice her truth, Serafina decided that the time had come to break free from the grip of old wounds. She began by reaching out to those closest to her heart. First, she penned a letter to Cordelia, her adoptive mother, articulating the pain of living in a house where truth was hidden and love was measured in conditional gestures. In that letter, written with both raw vulnerability and newfound strength, she expressed her longing to understand, yet also to be understood, for she realized that clinging to a past built on broken promises was draining her spirit. Cordelia's initial response was hesitant, clouded by years of entrenched denial, but soon beneath the layers of pretense, a glimmer of remorse emerged. Simultaneously, Serafina sought solace in reconnecting with old friends who had witnessed her transformation over the years. Among them was a trusted confidant named Marisol, a gentle soul whose quiet humor and unwavering loyalty had always been a refuge during turbulent times. Marisol listened with empathy as Serafina recounted the intricate web of family secrets, and the realization that the bond of blood did not automatically equate to the bond of love. Through long conversations over steaming cups of herbal tea in a cozy, sunlit corner of a small cafe, Marisol encouraged Serafina to pursue her true passion, music. It was a tender reminder of Liliana's legacy, the music teacher whose influence had long been buried under the rubble of painful memories. Inspired by these conversations, Serafina began reclaiming the pieces of herself that had been obscured by neglect. She dusted off an old piano, its keys muted by time, and dedicated hours every evening to relearning the melodies once familiar to her. The soft, resonant notes filled her small apartment, each chord unlocking locked-away fragments of joy. In the gentle cadence of familiar tunes, she discovered that her identity was not defined by the family that had failed her, but by the passion and the resilience she had nurtured over the years. The breakthrough came when she organized a small gathering at her apartment, a heartfelt event that brought together her closest friends and even reached out to family members willing to listen. Sitting in a circle, bathed in the warm glow of string lights and surrounded by the gentle murmur of sincere conversations, Serafina shared her journey of self-discovery. With each word, she untangled the threads of past sorrow and wove them into a tapestry of hope. She recounted her struggles at the dinner table, the shattering letter from Edmund, and the bittersweet reconnection with the legacy of her birth mother, Liliana. As tears mingled with laughter, the room transformed into a sanctuary of acceptance and healing. By the end of that night, Serafina realized that breaking free did not mean severing all ties with the past. It meant embracing every facet of who she was, both the beauty and the scars. That evening was a turning point, a rebirth born from the deep understanding that the truest freedom comes from owning one's story without shame. Each step forward was illuminated by the promise of authenticity, and in that light, even the darkest of family secrets lost their power. With her heart steadily healing and her resolve like tempered steel, Serafina vowed to honor Liliana's memory and to forge her own destiny, one that resonated with genuine love and unyielding strength. The journey had only just begun, but she was finally ready to write the next chapter of her life on her own terms. In the weeks that trailed behind that transformative evening, Serafina woke each day with a renewed sense of purpose that vibrated through her entire being. Every sunrise seemed to herald not just the beginning of another day, but the gradual blossoming of her authentic self. No longer shackled by the old lies and illusions, she felt as if she were reclaiming fragments of a life long buried beneath the weight of secrecy and unspoken sorrow. Her days became a delicate balance between introspection and creative expression. Mornings were reserved for quiet moments, steaming cups of chamomile tea, the soft rustle of newspaper pages, and heartfelt journaling where every inked word spelled a reclaiming of her truth. In these reflective hours, Serafina would trace back memories of her childhood, now reinterpreted with the bright clarity of adult understanding. She recalled the tender laughter, the occasional glances that hinted at hidden misgivings, and the unintentional neglect that had subtly shaped her self-worth. To honor the legacy of her late mother, Liliana, Serafina began to immerse herself in music more deeply than ever before. The faded piano in the corner of her modest living room became her sanctuary, a place where each soft key pressed echoed with memories of lullabies sung on dark, stormy nights and melodies that once filled old family gatherings with vibrant life. Slowly, she relearned pieces that Liliana had cherished, her fingers dancing over the ivory keys as if performing a sacred ritual to awaken dormant parts of her soul. The music, layered with both tenderness and resilience, wove itself into the fabric of her daily existence, offering solace and strength in equal measure. Outside the small walls of her apartment, Serafina ventured into new social circles that nurtured her emerging self. She joined a community center that offered creative workshops, where, amid groups of kindred spirits, she discovered the liberating power of storytelling and art. In these workshops, her voice, once muffled by self-doubt, grew clear and confident. Participants shared personal anecdotes of loss and triumph, and together they forged an unspoken bond of collective healing. One memorable afternoon, while painting under the soft glow of natural sunlight, Serafina found herself enveloped by a profound understanding. True family sometimes transcended bloodlines, emerging instead in bonds of empathy and shared dreams. Alongside her artistic pursuits, she nurtured a blossoming friendship with a gentle soul named Isla, a warm, witty woman whose own journey of reinvention had inspired many. Isla, with her contagious laughter and serene outlook on life, quickly became an invaluable confidant. Their long walks through city parks, amid clusters of rustling leaves and shimmering reflections in quiet ponds, transformed into sanctuaries of honest dialogue. They spoke of fears and aspirations, of past wounds slowly healing under the tender care of time, and of futures that promised both vulnerability and courage. Embracing her new self also meant making bold decisions in her personal life. Serafina's heart had once been a guarded fortress, reluctant to reveal its soft inner workings. Yet, with each passing day, she learned that vulnerability was not a weakness but rather the gateway to authentic connections. When old family invitations began to trickle in, messages laden with the customary pleasantries of duty and obligation, she made the deliberate choice to decline. Instead, she focused on building relationships that resonated with honesty and mutual respect. Whether through impromptu coffee dates or quiet afternoons exploring art galleries with Isla and her newfound friends, Serafina carefully curated a circle that celebrated her true colors. Her transformation was not without moments of lingering sorrow, however. At times, memories of past betrayals would infiltrate her serene reveries. Echoes of the painful dinner, the stinging letter, and the cold dismissal from a family that never truly understood her essence. Yet, each time those shadows crept in, she countered them with the radiant light of her reclaimed identity. She began to document this journey not only through music and art, but also by writing her own stories, each page a testament to the courage it took to own her narrative. In doing so, she hoped to inspire others who, like her, found themselves caught between the comfortable lies of conventionality and the daunting freedom of honesty. As the seasons changed, so did Serafina. The woman who once sat quietly in the background of her own life now stood with quiet authority, a beacon of strength and compassion. Her heart, once fractured by the weight of inherited secrets, had finally learned to beat in rhythm with its own truth. Every note on the piano, every brushstroke on her canvas, and every word penned in her journal was a declaration that she was, at last, whole. Serafina's journey of self-reclamation had reached a turning point. She was no longer defined by a past marred by deception and neglect, but by an ever-growing future filled with hope, creativity, and unwavering authenticity. It began with a single email. The subject line read simply, "Camden School for the Arts, guest speaker invitation." Serafina almost dismissed it at first. Her schedule at the hospital was demanding enough, and she'd been trying to give herself more breathing room lately. But something about the name tugged at her memory. Camden. It was the school where her birth mother, Liliana, had once taught music. Curious, Serafina clicked it open. The message came from an art program coordinator named Junitran, who explained that they were holding an alumni appreciation week and wanted to honor Liliana's legacy by inviting someone from her family to speak. "Your name came up through an old student of hers," the message said. "Someone who remembered her fondly and recently learned about you." Serafina stared at the screen, her heart pounding with a mix of disbelief and awe. She hadn't known anyone even remembered Liliana's time there, let alone thought to keep her spirit alive through something so public and thoughtful. It felt like the past, long buried under the dust of silence and family shame, was finally being welcomed back into the light. For days she debated whether to go. Could she stand in the place where Liliana had walked, spoken, laughed, and sung, and not fall apart? Would her voice even carry enough strength to do her mother justice? It was Edmund who offered her the quiet nudge she needed. "Legacies aren't meant to be locked away in memory boxes," he said one evening, sitting beside her with a mug of peppermint tea in his hands. "They're meant to be shared, to be lived. You're her legacy, Serafina." You always have been. So she said yes. When the day arrived, Serafina walked into the school auditorium with trembling hands but a steady heart. The scent of polished wood floors and chalkboard dust brought flashes of childhood, a strange blend of familiarity and foreignness. Students filtered in slowly, chatting and laughing, unaware that their guest of honor was silently gathering every ounce of courage she had. She was introduced with kindness, not grandeur. Today we're honored to have Serafina Carden, daughter of our beloved former music teacher, Liliana Carden. She's here to share a story, not just of music, but of rediscovery, resilience, and the power of truth. As she took the stage, the room fell into a hush. Serafina looked out at the sea of young faces, hopeful, restless, curious. Then she spoke. She told them about growing up in a family where she was loved in theory but not in practice. About always sensing a hollow space inside her where something essential should have been. About the night a letter changed everything. She spoke of music, the way it had always whispered to her, even when she didn't understand why. And most of all, she spoke of Liliana, a woman she never truly knew, but somehow always carried within her. She taught here, Serafina said softly. She played in this auditorium. She laughed in these halls. And now I get to stand where she once stood. It's the closest I've ever been to her in this life. The students didn't applaud immediately. They sat still for a long, tender second. Then the room erupted. Not with noise but with something gentler. Smiles, misty eyes, nods of understanding. A quiet chorus of hearts opening. Afterward, a girl approached her. Your story, it made me feel less alone, she said. I don't know my birth parents either. I always felt like maybe I was missing something. But now I think maybe we get to build who we are. We're not just what happened to us. Serafina knelt slightly to meet her eyes. Exactly, she whispered. You get to choose who you become. And that's a kind of magic. That day marked a new beginning. The school established the Liliana Carden Scholarship for the Arts, and Serafina was invited to mentor students who wanted to use creativity to navigate their own personal struggles. Her world, once small and riddled with cracks, had stretched into something luminous, filled with community, intention, and the echo of a mother's love. Back at home, she framed a photo of Liliana beside her own. 2 women, 2 lives, 1 legacy intertwined not just by blood, but by resilience, beauty, and the unbreakable will to choose light even after years in the dark. For the first time in her life, Serafina didn't feel like she was searching for herself. She had found her.